And today we're talking about free speech and comedy and a recent decision from the Supreme Court of Canada. The case involves a Quebec comedian named Mike Ward and a young singer named Jeremy Gabriel. Now, full disclosure, it's a case that my organization, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, was involved in as an intervener. Between 2010 and 2013, comedian Mike Ward told a series of jokes about young Mr. Gabriel, who was 13 to 15 years old at the time. Mr. Gabriel had become a local Quebec celebrity himself for his singing performances and for his story of a disability that caused facial abnormalities and required him to use a bone-implanted hearing aid. Mr. Ward told jokes about Mr. Gabriel as part of a stand-up routine about the sacred cows of Quebec. The idea of making jokes about a disabled child may strike many of us as distasteful and cruel. And Mr. Gabriel alleged that the jokes caused him serious pain and suffering. Mr. Ward was ordered by the Quebec Human Rights Tribunal and later the Quebec Court of Appeal to pay $35,000 in damages. But is it the role of government to control the types of jokes that comedians tell? According to the Supreme Court, in this case, the answer is no. Here to discuss the case is his lawyer, Mr. Ward's lawyer, Julius Gray, who represented Mr. Ward, and Joanna Barron, Executive Director of the Canadian Constitution Foundation. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Mr. Gray, congratulations on getting this result for your client. Now, can I get your initial reaction to the majority decision here?
Well, I was very happy because I think freedom of expression has taken a beating in the last 10 or 15 woke years, and everything was being canceled or repressed or controlled. And I hope this is the beginning of a comeback for freedom of expression. It's a serious step in itself, and I hope it's the beginning of a realization of just how important freedom of expression is in a democratic system.
Joanna, same question to you. Your initial reaction to the majority's decision in this case?
I thought it was a very thorough and useful, almost refresher on the rationale and value of free expression. They go into philosophers like Joseph Raz to talk about the inherent worth of freedom of expression. And of course, as you mentioned, the CCF intervened, and we were really happy to see some of the submissions we made on how freedom of speech should be balanced with other rights, which I suppose we'll get to a bit later, how those were really taken seriously and adopted by the court.
Now, Mr. Gray, one of the things that was interesting about the majority decision was that they sort of felt that it shouldn't even have got this far because there was a factual finding that Mr. Ward had picked Mr. Gabriel as a target for this stand-up routine because of his celebrity status rather than because of his disability. So how did we even get here, since obviously being a celebrity is not a protected ground?
Well, the issue is precisely that. What is discrimination? There were a number of things that were an issue, but one of them is discrimination, the definition of discrimination. The Human Rights Tribunal only has jurisdiction if it's discrimination. There was no discrimination. It's mere speech. It's extremely dangerous. And it's not just Quebec. It's across the country that the Human Rights Tribunals have been trying, I guess naturally, like all institutions, to enlarge their jurisdiction. And I think the Supreme Court reminded them that they are to be concerned with discrimination only and not with issues of libel, which have different requirements anyway, not with being a second superior court and having general jurisdiction. So yes, that is an important thing for the whole country, not just Quebec, to limit the Human Rights Tribunal. They did that in Whatcott as well, but it seems the Human Rights Tribunals continue to try to gain ground, and I think this time it's clear they're only concerned with discrimination in the real sense of the word, and not in some infinitely extended sense.
Now, Whatcott, for our viewers who don't know, is an earlier case from the Supreme Court that dealt with hate speech. Now, Joanna, your reaction to what Mr. Gray just said there, and in particular about the distinction between words and actions and actual discrimination.
Yeah, well, I think this is one of the sharpest disagreements between the majority and the minority. But the majority is very clear that there is a hard distinction between words and actions. As Mr. Gray mentioned, discrimination and the type of discrimination that human rights tribunals properly have purview over is actual exclusion from spaces, from jobs. It's actually things that actually affect somebody's material life. It's not this vague, symbolic, in the air, there's going to be an encouragement of harm ideologically.